So I got into the Battlefield Hardline beta, and I've played enough to make a fairly coherent preliminary review, and I have some mixed feelings about it, but let's start with the good news. So far the game's run pretty smooth, much better than Battlefield 4 ever did for me. I've yet to experience a crash or get stuck playing with a slideshow effect, and I very rarely die after taking cover or trade deaths with someone due to low tick rate, even with a fairly low-end computer. It still happens from time to time, but overall the game seems to run more smoothly than Battlefield 4. I still occasionally experience strange deaths and phenomena that are common in Battlefield 4, like being shot through a floor, getting stuck while walking over a tin can on the ground, or being unable to climb over small fences, and you can get stuck in a vehicle unable to exit if it's flipped on its side, requiring you to redeploy. But, in Hardline, most of the time, when I put 5 bullets in someone, they actually die, rather than seemingly absorbing half my magazine before going down. Compared to Battlefield 4 at launch, that's a significant improvement. In addition to overall more smooth gameplay, the unlock system seems less constricted and more reasonable. You earn money as your unlock currency and can spend it wherever you want to, rather than being required to spend it on a certain class. You can buy all the gear and weapons for a class you've never played as, provided you have the cash, so there's no requirement to play as an operator, that's the medic class, before having unlocked the revive tool and you're actually ready to be a medic. Weapon attachments still require some grinding to unlock each attachment category, but once you've unlocked the barrel mods, you can spend your unlock points on whichever barrel mod you want. This is a much less restricted unlock system, reminiscent of the original Call of Duty Black Ops, or to go further back in time, reminiscent of Battlefield 2142, and I feel it's a significant upgrade over the Battlefield 3 and 4 unlock trees that require class grinding. I sincerely hope this unlock style remains in use or is made more liberal at launch, and since Battlefield games have a tendency to use betas as demos, it's likely that this unlock style is going to remain in use. I'd prefer it to be a bit more liberal in terms of the attachments, but I can live with the system as it is, without anywhere near as much frustration as the unlock styles of Battlefield 3 or 4, and it's a big step in the right direction. There's also a few new features, such as the ability to capture enemy players and interrogate them for some map awareness if using certain melee weapons. Unfortunately, doing this is making me give up my knifing awards, so that makes me sad. Furthering the back to the old school attitude, zip lines, grappling hooks, gas masks, and tear gas are all making a return from Battlefield 2 Special Forces. I can't say I have too many complaints there, aside from grappling hooks being significantly more restrictive in terms of where you can put them, and tear gas not blurring vision as much as it used to. Now it just makes the screen a little fuzzy and deals a slow damage over time effect. Gear and equipment options are more diverse and more meaningful than many Battlefield 4 counterparts. In Battlefield 4, you might be able to choose between carrying a revive tool or having a grenade launcher. In Battlefield Hardline, you can choose between having a revive tool or having a grappling hook to climb onto buildings, for example, and there seems to be no grenade launcher in the beta. Overall, the Hardline beta has less gear options, but the gear options that are there seem to be more meaningfully diverse, and hopefully there will be more gear options when the game actually comes out, because I do think it would be unfair to criticize the lack of gear options this early on, even if one considers it to be a demo more than a beta, since typically not all equipment is available in either of those. However, this does bring up a few concerns about what's going to actually happen at launch. The servers are currently capped at 32 players, and there's 2 modes available. Heist, which is basically Rush crossed with Obliteration, and Blood Money, which is a new mode focused around collecting money from a money pile and bringing it back to your vault, coupled with the ability to rob the other team's vault and kill people carrying money to loot their corpses. It would seem logical to presume that there will be more maps and modes and more weapons and gear when the game actually comes out, but the question is, how many? How many maps are there going to be? Are the maps going to be as good? How many modes? Are the modes going to be as interesting as Blood Money? Is there going to be 64-player support? Are we going to get more gear and weapons, and if so, will they be as interesting as the options already present? As it stands right now, Battlefield Hardline seems a lot like an expansion pack to Battlefield 4. I find Blood Money to be a pretty interesting game mode, and I'm very pleased with the new gear and equipment items. It does seem like a solid expansion pack. However, the game's going to be released at full price as its own new game, with the Digital Deluxe Edition being currently offered for $70, just like the Battlefield 4 Digital Deluxe Edition was. Well, if that's the case, then what was Battlefield 4? I feel as if Battlefield 4 was a beta for Battlefield Hardline. If I had known about what a mess Battlefield 4 was going to be, and had known what Battlefield Hardline was going to be like now, and was given advanced knowledge about what Battlefield Hardline will be at launch, if it has the content to be its own game and doesn't have major problems, and if I didn't have the goal of making YouTube videos for Battlefield 4, I probably would have skipped the game entirely and waited for Hardline, much like how I never bought Modern Warfare 3 or Call of Duty Ghosts. This presents us with a problem. If Hardline doesn't have the content to merit it being considered a new game on its own, then it's probably not worth the price it'll be released at. It seems very unlikely to me that the game will be given a price reduction before release, but if it is a full-price game that runs smoothly on launch, then what was the buggy mess that was Battlefield 4, if not shovelware? If I weren't making YouTube videos for it, I'm not sure I would have gotten my money's worth out of it. But moving on. In the beta, I've seen a lot of people say that the game sucks. However, is that really because they've done a critical analysis? Because mostly it seems they're upset about the game having a cops versus robbers setting instead of a traditional Battlefield setting, or are upset that they're dying more often and their grenade launcher was taken away. I've observed a correlation between people with very low scores being the ones who complain the loudest about the game being terrible. Personally, I very much prefer the Battlefield Hardline equipment and unlock style, and I like the Blood Money game mode, though perhaps I'm biased because I'm very good at it. In Blood Money, you can employ several different tactics, which are all legitimate ways of winning the match. You can rob the enemy vault, you can run money from the money pile back to your vault, you can murder people carrying money and steal it, and there are a lot of different ways of accomplishing these objectives, which are all reasonably viable. I can see myself making Blood Money tutorials and gear reviews and overviews on how to use equipment, and I can see myself producing Battlefield Hardline videos. Moreover, having a lot of variety in how you accomplish objectives is, in my opinion, very useful for teaching new players, since they have more opportunities to be useful. Skillful play also seems to be very powerful in the two current game modes, and I've already had several rounds where my team wins the entire match in under 2 minutes, because, in the words of one of my teammates, we Ocean's 11'd that shit, which, when you break into a vault and make off with the goods in seconds via zipline, is a very apt description. A coordinated squad that conducts a good vault raid in Blood Money can often single-handedly turn the game around, and big comebacks are reasonably common in that mode. I suppose it's up to personal preference if you enjoy having a couple players be able to turn the tables if they're good enough and the other team is bad enough. I've certainly had a good time with it, but perhaps not everyone is going to feel the same way. So far in Battlefield Hardline, I've had a better time than most of my time in Battlefield 4, and I get the flattery of being accused of wall hacking more often.
Yes, your tears, they are delicious.
But I can't let my personal enjoyment of the game interfere with my objectivity. Is it really going to be worth full price to the average consumer? Maybe, but if so, what about having to pay for Battlefield 4 if it was an inferior experience, and I would have perhaps skipped it in favor of buying Battlefield Hardline, if that were seen as an option at the time? And what if there aren't enough new maps and modes and equipment at launch for it to truly be something other than an expansion pack? Well, I suppose we'll find out the answer to that closer to launch day. You can already pre-order the game, but I myself pre-ordered Battlefield 4 less than a day before the game was released. In the digital distribution age, there's hardly a rush. My recommendation at the moment? When it becomes open beta, try it out and see if you're having a good time. And when we're a week or two from release, look up the data on the game and check out the maps, modes, equipment, and whatever else that makes a Battlefield game enjoyable and appealing to you personally, and use that knowledge to determine if it's going to be a worthwhile investment for you or not. I will, of course, be making a full review once the game is released. Thanks for watching, insert pandering for likes and favorites here, and I'll see you next time. Later, YouTube.